Yes, everyone is muted right now. We have such a large call that everyone is on mute to avoid sound distractions. Welcome, everyone.
Oh, I see someone saying, I grew up in Michigan. Awesome. And then if you keep scrolling in the box, we have some behind the scenes facilitators helping us out, doing an awesome job popping all of those links into it. So just scroll a little bit. They are blasting it with those links. There are 2 different links in the chat box. One of those links, if you have a Gmail account, is going to allow you to download and make a copy of our webinar. However, if you're accessing it from something outside of Gmail, you'll be able to access it on the web. So try out those links.
Colleen, I think what you hear in the background is our attempt to be welcoming. But that will stop as soon as the presentation begins.
We found with our students, it's so helpful to play music or something in the background first, because then they know, even if it hasn't started, that they're in the right spot, internet's working, everything's ready to go.
Yeah, Louisa, go ahead and save that link and try it in a minute. I know a lot of people are trying to access it at once. Don't worry, I'm sure it will be up again in a little bit. The Google link has heavy traffic right now, but don't worry, that will definitely be fixed in a few minutes once we kind of space out.
Christina, I taught in Ludington before.
That's a small world.
Mm-hmm.
Kalamazoo too.
Lisa, this webinar will not be only for folks using Google Classroom. While we will talk about Google Docs today, we're going to talk about several other platforms and how to put accommodations in. So I think you'll find there are a lot of resources that will connect to you as well.
All right, got about 30 seconds before we get started.
I'm seeing a lot of people joining us from Washington. CJ says, that's because Washington is the best. My dad's out there too. It's beautiful.
All right, how about if we go ahead and get started?
Sounds great. I'm going to turn.
All right. So everyone, I want to welcome you to our 3rd in our series of distance learning webinars. My name is Ann Nutter-Kaufman. I'm a manager in our teacher quality department at NEA headquarters in DC. And we are excited to have our members being able to help other members from across the country try to figure out what the heck it is we're doing as we all try to navigate these crazy times. I do want to let you know that we are recording. This will be posted. We will continue. The other 2 webinars are up. You can download certificates, all of those kinds of things. We'll give you more information about that, and we'll put the links in the chat as we go. But first, it's my pleasure to introduce our illustrious executive board member, Robert Rodriguez. Robert?
Oh. Hi, Ann. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. Tonight we begin by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands served by our first people. The land where I live and teach is home to the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians. We honor America's first people and all elders, past, present, and emerging. Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Rodriguez, a middle school special education teacher from San Bernardino, California, and a proud union member with the NEA. And on behalf of the National Education Association, officers and executive committee, it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's session. And as a fellow special education teacher, I also get to say thank you to all of our general educators and special educators throughout the country that work tirelessly for our students during the pandemic. Tonight's webinar session, Providing Accommodations and Scaffolding Online, focuses on supporting students in an asynchronous distance learning environment. This webinar is one way we're trying to support our members in their professional work. And as I said, a special education teacher, I know firsthand the challenges of teaching our students, balancing demanded classrooms, scaffolding, and providing accommodations. And right now we're facing a global pandemic which has turned our world upside down. However, learning is happening. We are preparing our educators to take on all of the challenges that we face with reopening schools. I just want to be clear, no one has all of the right answers. As educators, we have to remind ourselves that teaching in a distance learning environment will look different for everyone. But we do have some best practices around distance learning that we can share with you here tonight on this webinar. And I also want to put a plug in for our website, educatingthroughcrisis.org. Here at the NEA, our members are our experts, and all of the distance learning webinars are led by experienced members and staff. At the end of this session, we're going to make a personal ask that you complete a short evaluation that will help us identify other topics that you might be interested in. And before I go on any further, I would now like to turn it over to our facilitators, Evelyn and Kimmy. Evelyn.
Welcome, everyone. We want to start tonight by reminding you of the NEA's mission statement to advocate for education professionals and to unite our members and the nation to fulfill the promise of public education to prepare every student to succeed in a diverse and interdependent world. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This webinar series is a goal to address professional issues that impact you. It's a benefit of your membership. So please do share widely and let people know that the NEA is a great part of our teaching community, and it's great to be a member. Don't forget, if you are interested, and you're active on Twitter, you can use the hashtag NEAEdPractice or @NEAToday. That is circled in red on the screen right now. That is a great way to advocate for the NEA and let others know about all of the resources like this webinar that you get with your membership.
We also have additional courses that you can seek out. Evelyn, if you wouldn't mind popping that into the chat box. The link is in the notes right there. So at the top where you see additional NEA PD support, there are self-paced independent study courses and micro-credentials that you can use after our webinar to continue focusing in on this study.
We want to remind you of some webinar procedures and norms. This is a really large call, so your camera and your microphone are muted. Please post your questions in the Q&A box. If you're looking at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A box with 2 speech bubbles. That's a great place for your questions. You can use the chat for other comments or ideas. It's a great place to collaborate. Please try to ask your questions concisely. We will answer as many of your questions as we can during and after the webinar, so we will stick around for any extra questions you have we didn't get to solve. Go ahead, Kimmy, to the next slide. So we wanted to start by doing a quick introduction. We will be talking today about providing accommodations and scaffolds. Our goal is that you will walk away from this webinar with strategies that you can use to provide accommodations, scaffolds, elements of SIOP, or explicit instruction in an asynchronous learning environment to support all of your students. My name is Evelyn Doherty. I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I teach EL and social studies at the middle school level, but I've also taught both high school and elementary school in the past. Both Kimmy and I were very fortunate in that our school district about 5 years put a group of us through a blended learning professional development opportunity where we learned for about 6 months a lot of strategies to support students in a blended learning environment, which has turned out to be an incredible resource for us over the past months. So both Kimmy and I, in addition to our regular teaching roles, over the school closure and the online learning, have been able to take on a coaching role in supporting other teachers and making the transition to blended learning.
And my name is Kimmy Conrad. I just moved to Baltimore, Maryland from Michigan, where I'll be teaching ESOL in an elementary school. Previously, I've taught 2nd, 3rd, and 5th grade, including when I taught in Ann Arbor with Evelyn. As she mentioned, we had that blended learning course that's really helped launch us into this world of providing supports for students in asynchronous settings. Over this summer, we've been so lucky to work with the NEA, where we focused on leading classes and coaching other teachers. And we're very happy to be here with you today, sharing what we've learned and what we've been coaching. Today, our webinar will be broken up into 3 main sections. We'll start with introducing supports. We'll have a quick overview of the supports we'll be providing today, and then we'll have some time to explore. A few notes. Remember that this webinar is being recorded, and these webinar recordings will be part of a series posted to the NEA Ed communities, so you will be able to access them later. They won't be available, however, until after our webinar is complete, and it will take a little bit of time to be posted online, so just be patient. There's also a certificate for participation. If you're interested in that, you can go to nea.org/webinars. So let's get started and dive into our content. So today, you're going to hear us talking a lot about accommodations. We want to clarify what we mean when we say accommodations. So accommodations change how students access instruction. They won't change what students learn. If it is changing what students are learning, that is a modification. Modifications can only be made if it's in a student's 504 plan or in their IEP. So today, we'll be focusing in on accommodations. Give me a second, I want to turn my captions back on. Nope, okay. So accommodations are not going to change the content of instruction. They won't change the expectations for learning, and they won't reduce the requirements of a task. Anything that changes those items, that would be considered a modification. Today, we won't be focusing on modifications. There are many different terms for accommodations that you might have heard tossed around. So you might have heard accommodations, scaffolds, SIOP strategies, which are sheltered instruction observation protocol used to support EL students, or elements of explicit instruction. All of these are types of supports and what we'll be discussing today. There are many different supports, accommodations that you are likely already providing in your classroom. I'm going to pop them up on the screen for you to read. And today we will be talking about how we can take these things that we did in the classroom so that we can provide them asynchronously to our students to continue to support them. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Evelyn.
So now that we've done an introduction, we're going to give you an overview of the 4 types of supports that we're going to show you tonight. First, we're going to talk about screencasting. So screencasting is a tech tool. There are many different programs that do screencasting, but it's a tech tool that allows you to provide all kinds of really important accommodations for students, such as reading text aloud or modeling. So we will talk about screencasting first. After that, we'll move on to Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is another tech tool, and it's a fabulous tech tool for inserting frequent checks for comprehension for students, and also for chunking directions and inserting moments for think breaks. So Edpuzzle is another really, really great tech tool for providing accommodations. After that, we will move on to talk about Flipgrid. Flipgrid allows students to express their thinking orally, which is really important for accommodations and for language learners. And finally, we will talk about Google Docs. Many of you might be familiar with Google Docs as a word processing system, but over the closure, many teachers have figured out ways to deliver entire lessons within Google Docs and include many of the accommodations that are really important for our IEPs and for students who are language learners or for students who are just developing literacy skills at a later age. So those are the 4 tech tools that we'll be talking about, and those tech tools allow you to provide accommodations for your students.
Now comes the fun part. We're going to explore those tech tools and discuss different strategies for providing accommodations. We'll start with screencasting. Screencasting has been an invaluable tool over the closure. It has been so helpful as a way to provide instruction to students asynchronously and to still provide that sense of connection. Screencasting can be used to narrate many different elements of instruction, including Google Slides lessons, physical whiteboard lessons. You can actually see a couple of those in the pictures here. Those are some of my screencast. You can see I'm holding up a whiteboard to teach my lesson. You can use it to narrate a learning management system assignment, such as on Google Classroom, Schoology, Canvas, a read aloud. And there are a couple different ways that you could do a read aloud. So I've seen many teachers will hold up a physical book and read aloud from their book, much like they would in the classroom. But because you're using tech, you can actually take it to the next level and provide a read aloud that your students can more easily follow along with. So for example, I've seen many teachers will use screencasting to narrate Kindle Cloud Reader. This is an online app. You can check books out from your local library and then read them for free on Kindle Cloud Reader, and then your students are able to follow along. I don't have this one on here, but I also recently heard about a teacher who was muting YouTube videos of other teachers reading books, so that way she could narrate on top of them and read at her own pace, which I thought was a great hack. You can also use screencasting to provide answers or feedback to your students. And it's really nice because it's so quick. You can easily do a very short screencast and then send it to your students to provide a pretty quick feedback for them. So before we move on and talk about some different tips and tricks for screencasting, let me show you how easy it is to screencast. All right, let me move my bar. So I need to exit my screen. Okay, my captions will stop momentarily. So the screencasting app that I like using most is called Screencastify. There are other apps and platforms out there that you can use, such as Loom, I know is another popular one too, but I have Screencastify. Screencastify, as well as Loom and many of the others, are free with some limitations. The one that I'm going to be using allows me to record videos up to 5 minutes. On the top of my computer screen, you can see I have an arrow. It says Screencastify if I hold my cursor over it. This is how I start a screencast. Screencast will download as an extension onto your computer, so that way you can easily, if a student's sending you something, do a screencast and send your response back to them. So I'm going to click on the screencast button right here. I'm going to say record. You can see I have some other options on here, but I want to do a more generic screencast for you first so you can see what that looks like. It gives me the option of clarifying what I would like to record. All right, and just like that, I am now screencasting. So what my students will see when I send them my screencast, they're going to see my entire screen. I can edit it and I can change the dimensions of what students can see, but I have it set so they're seeing my whole screen. They're also going to see my picture in the bottom right-hand corner. Screencasting has been, again, so invaluable because you're able to share what you're looking at. So if you think back to when you were trying to help your students navigate their learning management system like Google Classroom, and you had to call them, or you had to send them an email that said like, look in the upper right-hand corner and look for this certain icon. It's so much easier when you can just send them a video of your screen and show them exactly what to do. I'm gonna stop sharing and show you what it gives me when I'm finished recording. So you can see it's going to be saving to my Google Drive. There are some other options if you prefer not to share to or save to your Google Drive. You can also share straight to Google Classroom. You can publish to YouTube if you have a YouTube account. You can also get an embed code. So if you're using Schoology, for example, this embed code is going to be very helpful for you. I'm going to, for right now, just click Copy Shareable Link. What this will do is it's going to give me a link that if I send it to my families on Remind, on Class Dojo, post it on Google Classroom, wherever, families will be able to click on it and see the video that I've just created. Let's talk over some helpful hints that I have for you for using Schoology. I'm going to go back into our presentation. So my first tip that I have for you is that it's so helpful to provide visuals. A lot of teachers that I've seen who are new to screencasting, they're taking videos of just themselves. I think because this feels like the most obvious first step to do. Rather than just showing a video of yourself, however, it's helpful if you can provide some kind of visual for your students. Sorry, my computer's being slow. Let me try again. So whether you're showing students your screen or you're holding something up, that's just adding another layer of support onto what you're discussing. Evelyn, I'm having some trouble loading this. Would you mind pulling the screen and sharing on your end?
Absolutely.
Thank you. My next tip, we'll be able to show you when we get to Evelyn's screen, is to use closed captioning. So you actually saw me modeling this in the earlier part of our webinar. When you're presenting in Google Slides, there's a button when you're in present mode that says closed captioning. What this will do is it allows your students to be able to see exactly what you're saying. So you can imagine then if you're recording your screen, students will be able to see what's being typed on the bottom of the screen. So this is such a helpful for support for any students you have who maybe have hearing difficulty or who are EL students, because it's a little bit easier for them to read what you're saying and match it to your voice rather than just having to listen.
Kimmy, would you mind stop sharing your screen so that I'm able to start?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I'll wait to go on to the next one until we have that up. Because like I said, visuals are everything.
Okay. This one?
Thank you, Evelyn. Yes, one right before that. So the next one I have is that you can go into accessibility settings on your computer and you can enlarge your cursor or your mouse. This is a great tool if you're trying to point to things on your screen because it makes it easier. It makes it easier for students to see what you are pointing at. It's okay, I'll keep going this way. Another recommendation I have for you is to keep your videos short. I see, oh, we're good. Keep your videos short. So I mentioned to you that Screencastify had a 5-minute limit. I don't see this as a limitation. Instead, I really accept it as a challenge. It is so much easier for students to focus in on a 1 to 3 minute video rather than sharing with them a 7 to 10 minute video. So if you need to teach your students something that's going to take more than just a couple of minutes, what we recommend is that you film several shorter videos. We call this chunking. This helps reduce learning fatigue for students, and if they need to go back and they need to locate something to help them answer a question, then it's pretty easy for them to go back and watch that short video. Evelyn, can you click up on slide 20, please? Thank you. Another tip we have is to upload your videos to YouTube. This decreases the download time for students. YouTube is a platform that's built around hosting videos for students, or posting videos for everybody, really. And so if you're able to then post your video on YouTube, it doesn't take as long to download compared to if you have it saved to your Google Drive. That's one of the reasons I really like Screencastify. is they have that option right away on their site. So that way you don't have to go through that extra step. Finally, I recommend organizing your videos with a schedule or in a learning management system. So if you're using Google Classroom, Schoology, Canvas, Seesaw, you can post your videos in an organized way. If you're not using one of those learning management systems, however, it's helpful if you create some kind of calendar schedule for your students. So you can see on here in the background, I have a picture of a calendar, and it shows my students on Tuesday which video they'll be watching, on Thursday which video they'll be watching. Otherwise, it can become pretty overwhelming pretty quickly. Evelyn, will you click down on the next one? Thank you. So if you're new to screencasting and you are interested in trying Screencastify, we have a quick 6-minute video for you to watch. If you prefer to watch some shorter videos, we're going to model that chunking process for you right here. So we have broken that same video into 3 2-minute chunks so that way you can learn how to use Screencastify. Finally, if you're already using Screencastify and you're ready to take it to the next level, you can also use your phone as a dock camera, just like you might have in your classroom. This strategy is a little bit more difficult though, so if you're new to screencasting, I recommend trying screencasting first and then going on and using this video. We won't take the time right now to go into, we won't take the time right now to watch these videos because we modeled the process, but we'll be talking some more about what you can do with those links. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Evelyn.
So next we are going to talk about Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is a phenomenal tool for adding frequent checks for understanding and for chunking material. So before we get started, and I'm going to show you how to use Edpuzzle, I'm going to show you a little snippet of a few examples just so you get an idea of what the tool is capable of doing. I'm going to start with an example that uses screencasting. So Kimmy just showed us screencasting. So this is an Edpuzzle that has been created from a screencast. And this gives you an idea of how we're able to chunk and provide checks for understanding for students.
The farther apart they move. Let's check your understanding. How would you describe the arrangement of particles in a solid? There.
And then you'll notice that it stops and students answer a multiple choice question. And then you can—
They are packed closely together. Notice that in a liquid, they get farther, and in a gas, even farther. How would you describe the motion of particles in a solid?
And again, it will stop and it asks students to check their understanding with a multiple choice question. And when we press submit, students see if their answer is correct or incorrect. So it's a really great tool for providing those frequent checks for understanding with input. So that was an example with screencasting. I'm going to also show you an example that used the document camera, where I made a video with my phone and then I chunked it in Edpuzzle and I had students working along with me.
Label it. And I know that in the stomach, more chemical reactions complex carbohydrates breaking down into glucose molecules. I have my protein breaking in red ones as glucose. If I can fit it, I'm going to draw a little arrow. Amino acids. That's green. The proteins are breaking down into amino acids. And this one is fatty acids.
So then again, it chunks the video by pausing and asks students to make sure that they've drawn the following. So it's another way of chunking a video. So you've seen an example of screencasting and an example where we're using our phone as a document camera to chunk and provide checks for understanding. The last example combines the two, and this one is doing a guided release of responsibility for students as they analyze a data table. So probably this is starting to give you some ideas of how you might be able to use Edpuzzle in your own classroom. And next I'm going to show you how to use it.
My data set shows the time of day where the data was taken, the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, relative humidity in percentage, wind speed, the average speed of the wind over the hour, and wind gusts, if there was any sudden and fast gusts of wind. I'm interested in the time of the day where the storm happened, which was 7:30 p.m. So I'm going to look for that on my data set. And oh no, I don't see 7:30 p.m. I've got two choices. I could look at the data right before the storm happened, or the data during the storm. What would you choose? I chose.
So then it pauses and asks them what would they choose. So this is kind of a way of trying to get that guided release of responsibility or modeling, doing a we do collaboratively in an asynchronous setting. So as you can see, Edpuzzle is a really powerful tool for chunking information and for adding frequent checks for understanding. And with a little bit of maneuvering on your part, you can also do it for a guided release of responsibility and really doing as much of a we do as you can in an asynchronous setting. So now I'm going to show you how to use Edpuzzle. So you'll start by going to edpuzzle.com. And I'm going to go ahead and log out so I can show you the login process. So when you are going in to sign up or log in, it's going to ask you if you're a teacher or a student, and then you need to log in. Now, if you are a Google school, I highly recommend signing in with Google. The reason for this is because it can sync to things like Google Classroom, or it can sync to other LMSs where students are signed in with their Google account. So if you use Google, I highly recommend signing in with Google and making sure to use your school Google account, not your personal Google account. Once you're in Edpuzzle, you have a few choices. The first choice is you can search up here for videos that already exist. So say I'm doing the Silk Road. I can search and it's going to give me videos from YouTube, and I could choose one of these to add those checks for understanding to and to chunk. So that's one option. You can also upload your own content to Edpuzzle. You can do that directly from Screencastify, or you can put your content on YouTube. Once you have your video and you've decided the video, you can click Edit. And there's a few cool options here. The first new option that I want to draw your attention to is the ability to cut. It used to be with Edpuzzle that you could only cut from the front or the back of a video. So you could just focus on the most important parts for students, which is really great because sometimes you find like a 12-minute YouTube video, but there's only 3 minutes that are really going to be important for students. So you'll notice that when I'm in this cut icon, I can actually drag this way. I can drag this way to decide where I want it to start. And then none of this that's in the gray is going to show up. Now, they've just added about a month ago a feature where I could actually add a cut in the middle of this and then decide, none of this video is relevant to my students. So I'm going to cut it out. And I'm going to have it skip from this part to this part. So that's a really cool feature, especially keeping in mind that really 5 minutes is the maximum that students are able to pay attention for a video. So you can cut and chunk your video here. Next, you can go to questions. And as your video is playing, when you get to a point where you see a question that you would like to add, you just click the question button. There's 3 types of questions you can add. Multiple choice questions, where you can type an answer here and then type your responses, and you can add another choice. The other option for you is an open-ended question, or you could just add a note. So maybe you just want students to stop and think about something, or maybe you want students to write something on some lined paper. Some other cool features to notice is that it is possible to add a picture to your multiple choice question by clicking add an image. And you can also add images to your answers. When you're done with your video, you can add as many multiple choice and open-ended and note questions as you want. You'll press finish. Now there's a few ways you can assign it. If you click on this assign button, you'll notice that it gives me the option to assign it to one of my classes in Google Classroom. You'll have to give it permission to do this, but once you've done that, all I have to do is click here and it would automatically post to my Google Classroom. If you want it to post, make sure you've turned the toggle to on. Another way to do it is to assign a public link. Some of the pros of a public link are that students do not need to log in. One of the negatives is that students don't need to log in, so you can't see their answers unless they remember to log in. So I usually prefer to assign through Google Classroom if possible. You can also assign through a public link, or you can create a class directly within Edpuzzle. So again, Edpuzzle, when we're thinking about those modifications, is an amazing tool for chunking and for providing frequent checks for understanding with immediate feedback. I'm going to go back to our slide deck.
As you're doing that, I'm noticing popping up in the chat, a lot of people are asking about where else you could use Edpuzzle. So can you use it in Seesaw? Can you use it in Microsoft Teams, and so on? Because Edpuzzle is its own separate platform, you can share that link or use that embed code to share it in a variety of platforms. So while it has some really nice Google-specific features, you don't have to use it with Google Classroom. You can use it in other LMSs. So for example, Evelyn, her school is going to be using Schoology this year, and so she'll be using the embed code in order to share it with her students.
It's a great point. All right, so now that we have showed you Edpuzzle, which is great for those checks for understanding and chunking, we want to move on to Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a great tool for allowing students to express their understanding verbally, and it's also actually a good tool for allowing students to share their written work. So if you have students who are more supported when they're able to handwrite their answers, Flipgrid is one way that they can share that with you. So I'm going to show you an example lesson. The example lesson that I'm going to show you right now is with teachers, because I don't want to show you images of students, just so you know. But again, this is a great tool to use with students.
We've also noticed that students who maybe weren't as quick to turn in assignments, that using Flipgrid really increased engagement. Students really like Flipgrid. It's a nice opportunity for them to socialize and to build classroom community. So along with it providing different supports and accommodations to your students, like, it's fun. They really like Flipgrid.
Yes, that is very true. Engagement goes way up with Flipgrid. So you'll notice when you log into a grid, which is what they call a discussion, you'll see your prompts at the top. And in a moment, I'll show you how to set all this up, but first I just want to show you an example. So you'll see your prompts or your discussion questions here, and then you have the option to post a video of yourself. I usually post a video of myself reading the prompts and doing an example. There is a feature here for the immersive reader that will read it aloud. It does read it aloud quite well, but it is a little bit robotic. So I prefer to make my own video, but this is an option as well. After students have looked at the prompt and watched your answer, they can record a response. To record a response, they click this button and they'll have to log in. And once they've logged in, this video is gonna pop up. You'll notice it says that I have 5 minutes to record my video. That's a feature that you can change as a teacher. You can make it as short as 1 minute and as long as 10 minutes. I'm going to show you some of the cool things I can do as a student. One of the first things I can do is I can just record myself speaking. So a lot of times I have kids record themselves and they might hold up a picture of their written work. That seems to work really, really well. And sometimes they'll narrate their written work. Another very cool feature that has just been added in the past 2 months is this feature that allows students to record their screen. So essentially, this is allowing students to screencast. So they could record their screen, and you'll notice that it prompts them, just like when you're doing a screencast, it asks them if they want to do their entire screen, an application window, or a Chrome tab. I usually suggest a Chrome tab. And for example, now I can share my screen and it will be showing to Flipgrid. Uh-oh, I think that messed things up on your end. Let me reshare.
I think with it just being a large call, and anytime we use Zoom, we find that everything slows down like just a little bit.
Yep. And of course, all of my Flipgrid windows have gone. Okay. So we'll go back to Flipgrid. So again, that will take students and it will be showing to Flipgrid.
Evelyn, on your side, we're not seeing your screen moving. Your picture's still up, but your screen is still.
Okay, Kimmy, I am gonna pass it over to you for a second.
Okay. So as she's doing that, I have the example Flipgrid. I'm going to pull that back up to show to you. Let me grab that. It's always nice to see as see presenters working through the same issues you can anticipate experiencing as well. So you can come up with things that you want to say to your students as, you know, you're like, oh, like just hang out with me. We're going to get there. We're going to figure it out.
Okay, I'm back up and running. So as you can see, the Flipgrid recorded my screen, which is really, really cool because as a kid, they could narrate over like a Google slide that they've created and share here. Notice that students also have the option to add effects, which is something for you to think about in terms of norms. So they can add filters. I have found this really, really helps with students who are shy and who are feeling self-conscious because if they add the filters, they feel more confident. Also, there are some students who will take emojis and they will put them over their face. Students always figure out a way to do this. So that's something for you to think about in advance. Is that something that you feel comfortable with students doing or not? It can help with students who are feeling more self-conscious. Screen. So once you post your video, it shows up on the bottom. I don't think we've ever tried to do this on such a large call with the double. And now you'll see at the bottom that here's my video that I just shared, as well as all of the other people in my class have their videos here that they've shared. And if I want to watch someone's video, I'll watch mine just so I'm not throwing someone up. If I want to watch someone's video, when I'm done watching it, I can add a comment, but the kind of comment it's going to allow me to add is a video comment. So this is really a great tool for having an asynchronous discussion where students are responding to each other and building on each other's thoughts. But it is allowing you to also add some really great accommodations for students, such as allowing people to express their ideas verbally and wait time. So now I'm going to show you how to create a Flipgrid. You're going to go to Educator Sign Up. And then again, it's going to prompt you to sign up, and it's going to give you the option to sign up with Google. Again, I highly recommend that. When you open, it's going to come to this discussion page, and you're going to press Add Topic. Here you can give your topic a title, and you can give a prompt here. And you can change the length of the video, how long you want students to be able to talk. You'll notice that there's an option here, like I was talking about, to upload your own video explaining to students how to do the task, which I highly recommend. And then at the bottom, there's access control. So you'll notice that I have it set up so that students can only view this Flipgrid if they're coming from my district. You can also create usernames for your students, to, if you don't have a Google or Microsoft email, you can create student usernames here. So that's another option. You can also make it public, but I don't recommend doing that because then it's not private anymore. When you're done, you would press Create Topic. You would press Create Topic. That was the problem. And then you're going to get a link. You can share this link with students. Again, notice that it posts directly to Google Classroom. Notice that I can share it directly to Remind. Notice that I can share it directly to Microsoft Teams. If you need an embed code, you could embed this directly into your website or into a more robust platform like Schoology or Canvas. Or you can just copy this link and give it to students. Again, this allows students the important accommodation of being able to express their thoughts orally. All right, so we have now gone through 3 tech tools. And the last one that we're going to go through is Google Docs. So Google Docs, as we talked about, is a word processing system, but it is possible to use Google Docs to deliver an entire lesson. So we're going to show you an example of that. And then at the end, we're also going to note that you could use Google Docs to create a lesson, but then afterwards, decide that you are going to use another application like Kami to push it out to students for them to respond. So you don't have to be using Google Classroom to be using Google Docs. So here is my lesson. And I'm going to show you all of the accommodations provided in this lesson. And then Kimmy is going to walk over how to create those accommodations. So you'll notice at the top of the lesson, we have learning goals. Learning goals are an important support that we can provide to all students to help them target their learning. You'll also notice a learning schedule. This learning schedule is another important accommodation that helps students to anticipate what's coming, and it also serves to chunk the lesson. So you'll see that here students can see, okay, this is the parts of my lesson, and this is about how long I can expect them to take. Next, you're going to notice that the Google Doc is chunked, and we've done our best to do chunking in a Google Doc. It's not an ideal place for chunking, but we've added these banners at the top of each section, and these banners allow students to see where each part starts and ends. So here's the review and introduction, and if I'm a student and I'm scrolling, I can see that here is the next part. You'll notice that we can also include videos in a Google Doc. So for example, here is a very short video that we have included in the Google Doc. And this video, if you went to YouTube and opened it, this video does a few things. It starts by reminding students of what they've learned so far, which is an important accommodation. I'm going to show you a brief preview. And again, this video was created using Screencastify, which is the screencasting tool that Kimmy showed you earlier.
Welcome back to our medical mystery. We are doctors trying to figure out why McKenna is feeling sick.
So you'll notice that we're starting by grounding them, reminding them what is our purpose. And you'll notice that there's both written text and images, and I'm reading aloud exactly the written text, which is providing multiple modes of representation, which is a great way to support students who have IEPs or students who are language learners. Then you'll notice that there is some important vocabulary that is specifically and explicitly taught.
Today's important vocabulary: small intestine. Notice that the small intestine is very long.
So we're explicitly teaching vocabulary. And then there's a moment where we go over how to complete the assignment.
How to complete today's assignment. If you're on a phone, go to print layout. If you're on a computer, fit your screen. Start by filling in the blanks to tell the story of what we've learned so far. Next, make a prediction about how many feet long you think the small intestine is.
So as you can see, this video is providing some important accommodations. It's starting by reminding students of what we're learning and the story of our learning. It's then explicitly teaching vocabulary, and then it's previewing the assignment and all the parts of it. So Kimmy in a moment is going to show you how you could hyperlink a screencast like that. I've also seen people hyperlink examples of them reading the text aloud. You'll notice some other accommodations include that in addition to the more detailed directions, we have these very concise written directions at the top. That's another really important accommodation for students to help them see importance. You'll notice that we have lots of scaffolds here, like a word bank, clear places to fill in the blank, and clear images. Notice that chunking. Here, notice that any place where a student needs to respond, it's clearly marked in yellow. That's a great way to scaffold students. Also, in addition, underneath each question, there's a little video that says need help. Click here. And if you click on it, there's a short video of the teacher reading the question aloud and doing some guided thinking or a guided think aloud where students can follow along and then complete this question. Another important accommodation you're going to notice in here is providing graphic organizers for students to organize their thinking. So here, this is a graphic organizer that's been created directly within Google Docs. Several graphic organizers. You'll notice that we've been able to link things like Edpuzzles directly in here, so to mix up the representation that students are viewing. Again, you'll notice explicit vocabulary instruction with word banks and fill in the blank. And then again, you'll notice opportunities for students to self-differentiate. So here they need to answer the question and there's two choices. They can either fill in the blanks over here or they can write their own response. So again, this Google Doc lesson models many important accommodations, and I'm now going to turn it over to Kimmy, who is going to share a template with you and then show you how to provide some of those accommodations.
So I just pasted the lesson template for you into the chat box. This will do force copy, so we'll make a copy for you. This is a general template that you'll be able to use for any subject. You would just have to edit it, but I know everybody's going to be in different spots. So some of you might prefer to use this template while others would prefer to make their own. So I'm going to show you how you can also make each of these pieces inside of the template. So this is the template that I just put into the chat box. You'll see it has all of those same components that Evelyn just showed you, where you could go through and type on top of it. Oh, actually, let me show you this first. So the copy that I have here is one that Evelyn had shared with me, and she didn't give me edit access. I know this because if I look at the top right-hand corner under share, it looks kind of like a little lock symbol, and it also says request edit access. I've had a lot of teachers reach out to me when I've shared similar materials asking for edit access. But Google is set up so that way it's promoting collaboration and promoting the sharing of ideas. So you don't need edit access in order to be able to edit this doc. Here's what you're going to do. Go to the left-hand corner and click on File, and then make a copy. Again, I'm going to File, make a copy. This is going to allow me to make a copy that belongs to just me. It's like if you were scanning something and then you were writing on your scanned copy, essentially. So I'm going to click OK, and it's going to add my copy to my Google Drive. So now Evelyn won't have access to this copy. This one is just for me, and when I edit it, it's not going to change her original copy, which is great. So again, you can use it exactly as it is, but if you'd like to go through and you'd like to tweak it and change around how some of it looks, I want to show you how to do that. One of the big features you probably noticed in this is that there are a lot of different boxes. All of the boxes in here are made by inserting tables. To do that, go to Insert, Table, and then choose the size of your table. The one you see in front of you right here, this is a 2x2 table, and some of it's been merged together. I'm going to make a 1x1 for a title, and so I could say title, and then I can color it in to make it stand out to students to help chunk the space. So I'm going to fill it in. And then if you want to be a little bit pickier with it, you don't have to keep the black outside. You can change that to the same color or to white, so that way it blends in with the background. So again, what I did is I went to Insert, Table, and I'm picking the size table I want. So whether you're creating chunking bars, you're creating your learning schedule, you're inserting graphic organizers, all of this Evelyn and I have done through this Insert Table feature. Some of them look so complex, but that's all it is. You're just inserting your table and then changing your colors. We've been really conscious about how we've done the color coding in this Google Doc. So that way we could use the same color coding in each of the lessons to help students predict what each of those sections mean. Another way that I've seen teachers do it is that they color code the same part of the lesson the same each week. So maybe your introduction is going to be red. Your hook is going to be another color, and so on. So that way students can look and see that red is going to be the introduction. Oh, here's the red section. This is my introduction section. Next, I'd like to show you how to insert videos. There are a couple different ways that you can do it. The way that Evelyn showed you in that example was by creating a hyperlink. What that means is you turn some of the words on your doc into a link that students can click on. So right here underneath where it says watch the video, it says click here to watch a 3-minute introduction video. I'm going to highlight the words click here because I want to turn them into where students can click. I want them to click on click here. Then I'll go to insert link. From here, I can paste the link for whatever video I'd like to insert. So if I made a screencast, you'll remember that it gave me a link I could use. I could then paste that link right here. If I made an Edpuzzle or a Flipgrid, again, that gives me a link. I can paste that link directly into this video. A few more things I want to show you, I'm noticing our time is getting short, is inserting pictures. We know visuals are so important for students. So where it says picture here, you can insert your own picture. The easiest way to do this is to go to insert picture. I'm missing it right now. There we go. Insert image. And I'm going to search the web. This will search Google for all of the copyright-free images. It's not as robust as searching on Google by itself is, but it's, again, the quickest way to do it. So let's say I want an apple. It gives me pictures of apples. I'll say insert, and it will put the picture wherever my cursor was. If I did this process, however, and let's say I just have my cursor wherever in the middle of the page, that's where it's going to put your picture. Let me click elsewhere. And so sometimes you'll see that it's going to kind of, oops, that's fine. It'll mess up your formatting, and what you can do to fix that is first, click on the corner of your picture to change the size. Don't click on the side because that's going to distort your image. Then you're going to click it, and you want to click on this option right here that says wrap text. This will allow you to drag your picture into other locations on the page without disrupting all of the formatting. So then you can see here, I can put it off, I can put it off on this side without changing around all of the other formatting on my page. I'll have to make mine a little bit tinier, but then it will fit. There we go. Finally, scrolling down, I want to show you that there are some different options here for students to insert different ways of thinking. So they could type a poem, they can take a picture of a poem, or they could insert a poem using Flipgrid. If you leave the links as they are here, these will take you to a screencast that Evelyn made that will instruct students on how to take and insert a picture. If you click right here, this will give you another screencast that Evelyn made that will tell your students how to insert using Flipgrid. You can change these, however, by changing the link. So again, we went to Insert, Link, and instead of using this link, you can put in your own link to show students how to insert pictures. Again, noticing our time, we only have 2 more minutes. We'll be able to take more questions at the end if you'd like to know about any of these other features. But for right now, I want to go back to our slide deck where we have many other resources for you to click on and to browse later on. So if you need some more time looking at any of the resources we showed you today, or if you'd like to see some other resources on here, go ahead and come back into our slide deck, click on these links where Evelyn and I have created some Google Docs that will talk more about providing accommodations. If this felt very fast to you and you just want a quick cheat sheet to help yourself out, or if you'd like to share this material with other educators, there's also a Google Doc checklist that we've created. This will review accommodations, some of the helpful EdTech tools that we talked about today, and that whole list of accommodations. Evelyn and I really recommend trying to put at least 5 different supports into each of your lessons. So by printing these off, checking them off can be a really nice way for you to make sure you're providing those accommodations to students. All right.
Okay, I think that's me then. Yes. All right. So we've reached the end of our time together. We want to just make you a couple of make you aware of a couple of things. We've said it a lot on chat, but the recordings for this webinar and the recording for the other webinars will be on online in the next couple of days. You got to give us time to get things converted and uploaded. So don't freak out if it's not up there tomorrow, because it probably won't be until late, although we're getting the hang of how to do this. You can go ahead and use the hashtag NEAEdPractice. We have email there for you to ask questions to. There are directions for how to download a certificate at the NEA.org webinars link as well. And to close this out, I'm gonna pass it to my colleague, Robert, to bring us home. Robert?
So thank you, Kimmy and Evelyn. You guys were amazing. We hope that all of our participants were able to capture some of this exciting new knowledge which you've given us. And I just wanted to highlight a few things. And one of my favorite parts is how you both opened it up and really highlighting the difference between accommodation and modifications, because accommodations really benefit all of our learners. We're not changing what they learn, but how they are learning this information. And we did it by showing you 4 different tools with Screencasting, Edpuzzle, Flipgrid, and Google Docs. And while some of those may have seemed high-tech and slightly overwhelming, even within those, we could still capture those lower technology strategies that are still highly effective. Don't forget the importance of setting learning goals, learning schedules, chunking that information, and providing graphic organizers and visual cues. We would do it in a live classroom. We can do it in distance learning while we have now. We have lots of resources for you. Please remember to take time to fill out our evaluation. It is critical for us as a team in teacher quality to make sure that we are providing the resources that our members need, because we know you're successful and you're doing a great job. Schools are opening, they just look different right now. Thank you again, Kimmy and Evelyn, and thank you to all of our participants here tonight. Anne?
Thank you, Robert. And the exit ticket is being posted multiple times in the chat. So if you just go ahead and click on that, if you have been to previous webinars, then it should look very familiar. We're just trying to make sure that we are able to capture data and your thoughts about how to improve and move forward. There's been questions about, is there a special word for this webinar to be able to download it? And I read in the chat, it said, no, there's not. So last week it was rainbow, which seemed random, but I guess made some sense. But there is no word this week, so you are good. Kimmy and Evelyn, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. There have been so many great comments. I even got a text here from a colleague while we were going saying that there's a parent online and said every teacher in America needs to sit in this webinar. So you're having an impact across the country, and we greatly appreciate your time and energy around this. Everyone else, this is technically the end, but our facilitators will stay on for a little bit just so that we can answer some of the questions that we need to. But other than that, thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon some other time. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Robert. All right, I'm gonna pull up our Q&A. I think
So
maybe
Melissa, there was one question I wanted to answer. Melissa was asking, how do students use that doc without changing the format when adding the text? Melissa, I really recommend checking out Google Classroom. There's a great feature in Google Classroom that allows you to make a copy of a Google Doc for each student in your class. Other LMSs have this option too. I know Schoology does, I know Canvas does. So check with the LMS that you're using. So something like Google Classroom, Seesaw, Canvas, Schoology, to see if there's an option to make a copy of the doc for each student.
we didn't talk about it, but I listed it on our checklist, that copy that I showed you at the end. And then Kami is a really good app for that. It's spelled K-A-M-I. Check that out because that will allow you to make copies without students changing it as well. I only just learned about it last week. Take a look at it. It's great. Another thing, a quick note with formatting too, that kind of ties into what you just asked. So when you are creating these boxes, so students aren't changing the formatting of your whole thing, what Evelyn and I recommend is grabbing from the bottom and dragging it to the size that you want it to be. Otherwise, if you push enter, 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 or like return, 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 when students type, the box is going to continue to get bigger and it will disrupt all that formatting that you just spent all that time trying to establish. So what you want to do again is grab from the end and pull it to the size that's going to fit your student's response. I know that's not exactly what you're asking, but just adding for students, help them with their responses.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
We also forgot to mention that we've included some bonus SEL resources in our slide deck. So if you go to the very end of the slide deck, knowing that we're all going to be looking for ways to create classroom communities, we've tossed in a whole bunch of different slides that are there for you to copy and use. So I just wanted to make a note of that so that way you know that they're there at the end. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Oh, I was going to, Jen was asking us, is this what we provide for all students? If yes, can you explain how you make the accommodations for students for their IEP? So Jen, something that we try to do is we try to build in as many of those accommodations as possible for the entire class. Sometimes for students that have an IEP that allows them to have shortened assignments that still focus on mastery of specific learning targets, I will make a copy of the lesson and I will shorten it by removing some of the questions, but still giving them opportunity to practice those key learning targets and learning skills. Google Classroom and many other LMSs have options for you to individually assign students different assignments. So that's a great tool to take advantage of, and students are not able to see that they are receiving a different assignment from their peers, which is really great, especially with the older grades.
We've also found that it's helpful to provide as many of these accommodations as possible to all of our students, and that students will often self-select. So if you provide several videos of yourself reading aloud something for your students and then give them the option to also read it themselves, students who are capable of reading it themselves will often pick that option. So they do a really nice job of self-differentiating. They don't want to do any extra work. And so if there's a quicker way for them to do it, often they will. So I think about as well that it's helpful to provide these accommodations to all students and allow them to pick what is necessary for them. I'm pulling up our Q&A box. But it's not coming up. Can you see any more questions, Evelyn?
Oops, I see a question about saving the Q&A, which I unfortunately do not know how to do.
So there's no easy way. You can go into answered and go Control A, which is all, and then copy, Control copy, and then paste it into a Word document, but the formatting is nuts. It'll get everything that's there, but it's nuts.
And unfortunately, even if you save it in Zoom, they do give you the option to download it. Same thing. It's like even worse than if you just copy and pasted with the formatting. It just is really disrupted. So there's not a great way, unfortunately.
I've seen a lot of questions about people asking about finding the time to create these lessons. It's so, so important to be collaborating with your colleagues, to be dividing and conquering. That's one reason that the Google Docs or the Google Slides are such a great tool, which is the fact that multiple people can have access to the file and be working on it concurrently or working on it on their own time whenever they have time during the day. So that makes a huge difference for that collaboration.
That's why too we wanted to make sure to share that template with you. So if it helps you, you don't have to start from scratch. You can use that template and just fill in your lesson objectives, your learning schedule. We also find that screencasting rather than looking for YouTube videos can help shave off a few minutes here and there because you know exactly what it is you want to teach. But then having to find the video that supports that lesson takes a lot of time. So screencasting has honestly saved us quite a bit of time.
Okay, I'm looking through the remaining questions. I am not sure if the NEA has plans for webinar training designed for special ed teachers and remote teaching. That I see your point that these tools help meet the needs of a lot of students, but there is a group of students that might have a higher need and you might need more specific tools to meet that group of students.
As of right now, we don't have that. And I'm leaning to Chris and Jen because they know the library better than I do. But
hey, it's Chris. We don't have that, but if you're an expert, like we'd love to talk to you. This is all teacher leader led, so if you've got some expertise, we'd love to have you share it. I'll put my email address in the chat. You can email me directly.
Louis, I see you were asking, can you save all your screen videos on your own YouTube channel or where do you store them? So if you're using Screencastify, you link it up to a Gmail account. There are other ways to do it, but I've linked mine to my Gmail account and I use my school Gmail account. Then from there, if you wanted to upload them into a YouTube account, you can, but it would have to be your personal YouTube account. So I would make one just for school because I know with ads, it can get a little bit crazy, and that's how I would publish them. As much as possible, I try to keep all of my professional accounts separate from my personal accounts.
Michelle is asking, how would you accommodate a student in reading a novel at the middle school level? I would absolutely recommend doing what Kimmy was talking about and reading the novel aloud. I do that for a lot of my students, especially during the closure when I'm not there to support them one-on-one, is creating read alouds of the novel, or honestly, a lot of them already exist on YouTube.
And then Evelyn had shown you using Edpuzzle to create those pauses for understanding. If you upload your video for that novel study into Edpuzzle, you can create those moments to have students pause and think about the text. Additionally, while you can go through and you can check all of the answers, if you use the multiple choice, that can be a really quick way to give those students instant feedback.
Teresa is asking about the accommodations and if we have to name all the accommodations on the IEP and not just the modifications. So Teresa, typically, at least in the IEPs in my district, accommodations are listed first. So things we can do to change how students are accessing content or how they're showing their understanding. And then modifications are listed separately if there is any point where students should be receiving different curriculum. So typically those are listed separately, and typically IEPs do outline accommodations such as chunking or such as frequent checks for understanding or such as modeling or such as written and verbal directions. And so hopefully after today's webinar, you feel like you have an idea of how you could show that you are providing those types of accommodations.
And our hope right now too is by naming each of those things, it's just reminding you that like, yes, you are doing those. And so just giving you that way so you can notice and name those different ways that you're applying that in an asynchronous environment. Sorry, Anne, you were going to say something.
No, I was about to close you off, so I'm glad you did that. So we're at 8:15. If you continue to have questions that we can help answer, you can use the NEA the member rapid response at NEA.org, and we'll make sure that you get an answer to your questions. And otherwise, the recordings will be up hopefully tomorrow or the day after. So thank you once again, and we will see you later. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.